All right, Mr. Brisco, are you ready?
Of course I'm ready. I'm here.
Welcome to Stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be your Chickasaw native, your Chickasaw Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And what a wonderful treat we have today. She is an ECW original. She is the queen of extreme, and she is a poker aficionado, which means I think she's the absolute best in the world. She is Miss Francine. Francine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And I love the fact that you like to play poker and gamble as well.
Absolutely love it. It's what I do. It's what I do all the time. I love numbers. I love looking at odds, and it says that euphoria of thinking you're right and then winning.
Right.
Or when you're thinking you're right and you lose, then you go, oh, okay, I'll get them tomorrow. Either
Are
way,
you good? Are you good at Texas
Hey,
Hold'em?
Francine, I'm gonna toot my partner's horn here. He's been doing since baseball season started. We're about 6 weeks in, right, John? 6, 7 weeks
yeah,
in.
40 days in today, so
40,
it's 200
40
back.
days in. He's probably only had one losing record. He does pick fives every day. I mean that's dedication too. To every day get up and do the research on these games because baseball changes so drastically just every day of how the clouds are looking, where the sun's setting and who's pitching and all this stuff. He researches this. We do 5 games. He does 5 games. He's usually 4-1 every week, and he's above the professional percentage right now. So I'm proud of my partner just from what he does with that there, the dedication he shows for that man. He's knocking them dead. So
Well, I'll tell you something. The site, I'm not going to say which site, but the site that I use to gamble on sent me a free sports bet.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really know sports betting too much. When I was younger, I used to call my dad's bookie for him, and I would put the
wow.
horses in for him. Because he'd be with the paper in front of the TV picking the horses, and I would call over to the bar and I would make his bets for him. But they gave me $100 sports bet yesterday, and I was looking at all the stats, and I was like, I don't know how to read any of this. I said, I'm just going to bet the Phillies because I'm from Philadelphia, and I won. I won $100.
Wow.
Awesome. Phillies are great this year. They have the best record in baseball. I mean, they're
Yeah,
incredible this year.
Billy does right now. I didn't
Philly has
know.
the best record in baseball. Everybody talks about the Dodgers and everybody talks about Baltimore, but Philly has the best record in baseball. Those guys are awesome.
well, they didn't let me down yesterday, so I'm $100 richer. So
Well, I'm a little nervous because Tommy Dreamer now follows me on my 5 best bets, and he sent me a betting slip that he had won money on them. So now I'm getting nervous because
yep,
when it's my money, I don't mind, but
Yeah.
other people's money scares me.
you
You
should
you
start
you got
your own hotline. You give your picks,
That's right,
and
like Mean
then
Gene.
yeah, but you're giving picks, and people are going to win off you. And you make a little bit of money from it.
So was
you
your
know
dad
from,
any good
from
at horses?
Yeah, he was pretty good at it. From what I recall, I mean, I was young. I must have been like 9 or 10 years old,
And
and
he just like, hey, call the bookie, and
yeah,
you knew who the bookie was.
the
That's
number was
Philadelphia.
that's Philly. The number was on a piece of paper because our bookie there was a there was a bar around the corner from our house, and it was the Italian American Club, and the gimmick was you had to be Italian to get in, and that's how they said they kept all the riffraff out of the bar. You had to be like Italian. My dad was French, but my mom was Italian, so they would let my father in because of my mother. But it was the same group of guys, the same 12 guys at the bar every time you went in there. And we knew everyone. My dad would take me sometimes, 10 years old. I would just play like Pac-Man while he would be at the bar socializing or whatever. Got to know the bookie. So he said, oh, call who, I don't remember his name, but call this guy and tell him I want, number 5 trifecta, whatever it was. And I would just call every weekend and I'd be like, hey, this is Frenchie's daughter. He wants blah, blah, blah. And I'd place all his bets.
wow.
So the bar that wanted to get rid of riffraff had an illegal booking operation in it.
Yeah. There were probably a lot of illegal things going on.
And booking games was a minor.
That's
Well,
right. That's right.
they didn't start. Actually, we went in there at like 19 years old and they let us in. We drank underage around 19 years old. But like at 10, I was just playing video games. Well, everybody brought their kids back then. Like that was the thing to do in the 80s, I guess. You brought your your kid to the bar with you. I don't know. And the moms went out shopping or did what, I don't know. It was like you don't wear a seatbelt in the car. You know, the baby sat in the front seat with the mom. There's no child seat in the back. Everything was just good to go in the 80s. So, you know.
Isn't it amazing? We survived without car seats, without helmets on bicycles, without pads and all that stuff. And
my brother-in-law had an El Camino. Do you know what they are? Those cars, the El Caminos?
It's a half car, half truck. My college roommate had one.
Okay. So
my brother had one.
He had an El Camino, and it sat like 3 people in the front seat, you know, usually 2, but you could fit a third. And me and my niece, we were the same age at the time. We were so thin at like 10 years old that we would drive down to the beaches, which was an hour and a half drive, in the crack between the seat and the metal part that started the truck bed. We just slide in there and we'd sit there for an hour and a half
and was happy as could be, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, I remember those old station wagons. One of my friends, you know, when they were on a team, you know, parents usually drive the team around, especially the high school wrestling teams. He had one of those old station wagons with the rear seat facing the back. You know, you had your 2 regular rows of seats. Then you had that third row of seat, which was a big thing back in those days.
Right.
But it faced backwards. You know, so if you get hit, man, you're squished like.
Oh my God. We are lucky to be here. Let me.
But we survived. We survived all that.
We did. We're here. We're going strong. So.
I was in Portugal recently, and at about 100 feet, I had to go from the hotel down to the dock where we're going out fishing. And I said, I'll just get in the back of the truck. And the guy goes, no, that's illegal. You get a ticket. I said, it's just right. He goes, no, that's illegal. I thought, there's no one that didn't do that when we were kids.
Yeah.
We used to ride on the hood and on top of the damn cars, man. We go out those old country roads with bumps like that. Get on the hood, get somebody on the hood, and the big game was throwing them. You know,
wow.
That's right.
I never rode on the hood of a car, but I did sit in the back in the truck bed several times.
We used to put our cars on railroad tracks and go over to the next little town. That's how crazy we were.
Daredevils.
It was great too. You'd have no stops anywhere. Just people just roll at a steady pace on the railroad tracks. And
amazing.
Sometimes you had to deflate your tire, but not all the time.
The Brisco brothers car in the Florida territory was legendary. I'm sure it might even make some ECW originals blush. There was so much going on in that.
Wow, that would take a lot.
There was a lot going on there.
I'm sure there was. So,
well, Francine, welcome aboard. About a year or so ago, John told me that he ran into you at an autograph signing deal and mentioned to you about the podcast, and we kind of fluffed it up and kept trying to find it, kept trying to find you, and then finally I did the work. I found you at an autograph deal, and I said, "Okay, you're on. Come on."
Yes. I said, "Absolutely." He was so slick. He's like, "I need your phone number." I was like, "Absolutely." Let's go. I'm glad you did find me though, because it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, well, welcome on the show here. Tell us a little bit about Francine. You know, we get to do research, which is John and I's favorite thing to do with guests, and you learn so much more. You know, you go down the road with people, then you kind of read, and you of course, if it's on the internet, it's got to be true. So we found all this stuff, but you know, I was reading where you were working at an office job, and you saw an ad on TV. Is that how you love for wrestling, or how did even before that? What made Francine look into wrestling as a career?
So I'm not like your typical wrestling fan. I know 99.9% of the boys are like, I loved it since I was born, 5 years old. I'm going to shows with my dad. That wasn't me. I didn't get into watching it until maybe 18, 19 years old. I was a late bloomer in the business. So I remember the first thing I saw was Global. And then I found a WWF at the time. And so I became a huge fan. I would go to the Spectrum. I think they ran every month or 6 weeks or something. And I none of my friends were wrestling fans, but I would drag them with me because I didn't want to go by myself. And we'd go and watch these shows. And once I graduated high school,
Who was your favorite?
I loved Sherry Martel. So Shawn Michaels and Sherry That was like my duo. I loved those two. They were my favorite. And I gravitated towards the heels back then. So I just enamored with it, loved it. I was working at a life insurance company in Center City, Philadelphia. And one night I came home from work and I had gotten into an argument with one of the agents there. He blamed me for something I didn't do. I got very upset about it. And like I worked in data processing. So I just had a cubicle. I didn't even have a window to look out of. It was very dreary. Like it just wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And now I'm like 19 going on 20. And the first thing that happened was there was a contest. There was a channel called the Video Jukebox Network, and you would call the number and request like a music video that you wanted to see. I think you had to pay like 99 cents or something. They were having a contest for the release album WrestleMania. So you got to win like a trip to New York. Now, remember, I'm in Philadelphia, so I could have just skipped over to New York at that point. But you got to win a front row seats at Raw, and then you got to go to this WrestleMania party up top Madison Square Garden, you know, the next night after Raw. I ended up winning that contest. Wow. And I had never met a wrestler in my life in person. I didn't know anybody. I got to take a friend.
Real quick, what was the contest? What did you have to do to win it? Was it just submit your name?
And a postcard.
Just send a postcard. So you just randomly, it wasn't like a talent contest or something.
No, and I think I might have sent like 20 postcards in. I bought like and I must have been the only one who entered because I think I also came in first and second place.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if anybody else entered this contest, but I ended up winning. So I got to meet Vince McMahon, and there were a bunch of the guys there. It was like Lex Luger. His bus was outside when he did the Lex Express thing. Wow. Tatanka was there. Jim Duggan was there. Randy Savage was there. I have a picture, like an 8x10 of all of us together, which is a nice memory from it. And then I got to go to Raw, and I got to sit in the front row of Raw and watch the show, which was pretty fun, you know. And then I met Blackjack Brown, and I don't know if you guys remember who he was. He recently passed away. He was a pretty famous photographer. He did a lot of the indie shows, and he did ECW and stuff. And I'll never forget, he gave me his card, and he said, if you ever want to be a manager or valet, I can get you $50 on the indies. And I was like, what does that mean? Because I didn't even know what an indie was. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know this guy. So I kind of got rid of the card. I went to work the next week and came home on a Tuesday, turned the TV on, ECW was on. First time I had ever seen it. And I was just like, what is this? Because there were a ton of wrestlers I did not know. Because remember, I only watched WWF and Global. My range was very small at that point. And I fell in love with their product because it was so different than the other two organizations that I was watching. And the more I watched it for like a month or two. And I said to myself, I think I can do this. Now,
wow.
God, I mean, I had no experience. The only people I ever met was at the party, and I didn't keep in touch with anyone.
Were you athletic in school? Or?
I mean, I was a cheerleader and I played some basketball, but I didn't like gymnastics. I quit after 2 weeks because I didn't want to flip and stuff like that. I had no idea what it entailed. I just saw these women on the screen and I was like, I think I can do this. And they had a commercial and it said, do you want to be a manager, a wrestler, or a referee? Call this number. So I picked up the phone and I called the number. And they were like, well, you have to come down and you have to meet Todd Gordon. And I said, okay, where do I meet him? And they said, oh, he's on Jewelers Row. And I was familiar with that because that's where I was working. I was working at 16th and Market, and Jewelers Row was just a couple streets away. So I got my dad to take me, and I think I was 20 years old, and I went and I met Todd, and he looked at me and the first thing out of his mouth, he said, you're really pretty. You'll never have to bump. And I didn't know what that meant. And I just went, okay. And he goes, you want to start wrestling? I said, sure. So I went into it thinking I was going to be a professional wrestler and started training right behind in the ECW arena. There was an old ring in the locker room in the back. And that's where I trained. And
were there anybody in your class that went on?
No. I was the only one. I was the only girl in the class. There were like 5 or 6 guys, but none of them really made it. But Stevie Richards would come down to help. He was there, and JT Smith was my main trainer. I was supposed to have Larry Winters, but our schedules didn't mesh. So they gave me JT, who was part of the Full-Blooded Italians at the time. So he was training me, Stevie was helping, and then the rest of the guys, like
how many days a week did you have to do this?
Like 1 or 2 days a week. It wasn't very consistent. I remember I worked for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then Todd came down and he said, "I want to see you wrestle." And I was just like, "But I'm still learning how to take bumps." And he's like, "Put a 6-minute match together." So me and this girl, Angel Amoroso, got together and we did it like a 5 or 6-minute match. After I was done, I went to the bathroom. I threw up because I was so nervous and didn't know really what was going on. But Todd said he was impressed. And that's when Paul Heyman was just coming into the company. And they told me to go to this one show in Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania, where I was going to be a beauty pageant winner. And they were going to call me Miss Montgomeryville. And I said, okay. And they said, just get a dress.
Wait, where is Montgomeryville?
It's in PA, Pennsylvania.
Oh, there is a Montgomeryville.
Yes. An actual place.
Yes.
Right?
It's an actual place, and I was Miss Montgomeryville. So
have you ever gone to Montgomeryville and say,
I've never been.
You guys owe me. I miss Montgomeryville.
I've never been there. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't meet Paul yet. So I remember there were two levels to the building, and I went and I said hello to Paul, and he tells me, you're going to be the guest timekeeper, and you're going to sit there the whole show. And then your cue is when you're grabbed, you're going to take a choke slam. And I said to him, I didn't take that in wrestling school. I don't know how to do that. And he said, what, you don't want to do it? And I said, no, I'll do it. I just don't know how. And he said, don't worry. And it was 911. He said, he'll guide you. I said, okay. So I came down these wooden steps, just did the little hello, I'm a beauty queen thing. And I sat there the whole show. And when it was the time, he grabbed me, and it was that white noise because no one knew who I was. That was like my first real thing doing with the company. And he choke slammed me, and the place gasped. It was just like, oh my God. Cause I was about 110 pounds back then. I was this little tiny thing. And they put me on a stretcher, and Stevie Richards drove me home. They took me right out to the back and put me in the car. I didn't even go say goodbye to anyone. And that was my first taste. And I said, gosh, I hope I get a phone call, because I don't even know if I did good. Like, I don't know. But they called me, and I went back. And, Paul told me after that, women's wrestling now does not sell. He goes, you're going to make money as a manager. And that's what he wanted me to do. So I didn't really continue training at that point. I learned everything on the road. And
did you quit your job immediately, or did you stay working?
No.
What was there?
Yeah, what I did was I quit the job in Center City. I was working a night job. I worked from midnight to 8 answering phones for catalogs.
Oh, and you had to hate that.
I didn't like it very much, but I wasn't, in the beginning, you don't make a lot of money. So I had to supplement my wrestling income by working. So I worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I was on the road at that point. And then we went to 4 nights eventually that we were on the road. So eventually I did quit, but not until Paul gave me a raise.
Did they do any follow-up from the choke slam? Was that an angle to get you into the business, or was that just a house show that was a one-off?
It was a house show.
So just a one-off.
It was a one-off, and then I got a call, and they said, come to Pulsations nightclub, which was another place in the outskirts of Philadelphia suburbs, and I was Penny Pulsations. So they changed my name from Miss Montgomeryville to Penny Pulsations, and they had me wrestle the girl that I wrestled in front of Todd for the tryout. And in the middle of the match, same thing happened. 911 came out and choke slammed us both and laid us both flat. And I guess Paul was just trying to see if I would, take it and not complain. I don't know, but I never said a word. I just said thank you afterwards because that's what they told me to do. And I just kept getting calls, come back, come back. So then I was working all the house shows about a year and a half before I even made TV.
Yeah, now, to start out, what was your parents thinking? Were they supportive of you?
My mom hated it because when I would come back from training, like, when you train, you get like all the bruises from running the ropes. And I was like purple from under my arm to my thighs. I was just deep purple. I didn't move for the rest of the week, going to work. I would be crying because it just hurt. And I was just so tiny back then. My dad loved it. My dad came to the shows. He knew all the boys. He would come in the back and say hello. Yeah, my dad was a big advocate for it. But my mother was the little Italian lady who said the rosary and prayed all the time and was like, you're going to get hurt. Something's going to happen. And when you're 40, you're going to feel it. And she was right.
Was your dad a wrestling fan before?
Not really. He was just my dad. I was the baby. I was an accident. So my brother and my sisters were way older than me. So I feel like me and my father had a different relationship. He was very, very on hands with me growing up and always around and very, very supportive. And the biggest thing was I didn't drive. So he would drive me. If I didn't have a ride with somebody else, he would drive me, God bless him, everywhere I went until I got my license. And, I didn't want him to sit in the car and I'd be like, well, come in and watch the show, and say hi to the boys and stuff. And he would come in and everybody loved him. So
what was the progression for starting to work? Were you still just doing one-offs and all the house shows? Were you a manager at that point? You said you were doing all the house shows, but what were you doing?
So at the house shows, they would pair me up. Like sometimes I would be Tommy Dreamer's tag team partner and we'd go against like, I don't know, Tommy Cairo and Peaches or the different people that were just, I guess it was filler matches back then. I don't know. I guess Paul was trying to see where I would fit best. And I would just show up and whatever they told me to do, I would do. I don't remember exactly when I started managing, but the first people that they put me with were the Pitbulls. And like I said, I was doing stuff for them about a year and a half before I even made television. So they brought, when TV came, it was like 95 at that point. They brought me in, they put me in the crowd as a plant several times, which was very, very uncomfortable. ECW arena was always like 95% men. And here they would bring me out in the middle of the show. So everybody knew I was a plant and they would just, they touch your hair or somebody would be touching my shoulder or grabbing at my pants. I'd be like, oh my God, hurry up. Where's my cue? Get me out of here. It was scary, but they brought me in as Stevie Richards' girlfriend. So I was enamored of him and I had to hold up signs and Paul would ridicule me on camera because Stevie was supposed to be like an idiot. And that's how I.
So this is in the infancy of their TV days then, right?
This is TV. Yeah, this was the hardcore TV.
Or when they first started their TVs, right?
Yep.
Wow.
So that's a pretty dedicated dad. That's an amazing thing for your dad to take you all the house shows, and that's pretty amazing. That's awesome, your father. Man.
He was great. He was the best. I mean, he was so proud of me. The only fault that he had was if guys found out where I lived and I wasn't home, he would be like, "Oh, you can come back later, and she'll give you an 8." And I used to say, "Dad, don't tell people that I live here," because I was still living at home at the time. I was like, "Please don't tell anyone I live here." But he was just like, "I'm just so proud of you, and I'm so proud people want to see you." And I was okay.
How long was it before Mom started getting on the bandwagon?
She never did.
She never did.
Never did.
Mine didn't either. Mine didn't either for either one of them.
Mine didn't either.
She never did, especially when we did. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but one of the best stories about my mother was we did a thing right after Tyson Holyfield with the ear when he bit the ear. Paul thought we should play off that, so I ended up biting Terry Funk's ear. Now Terry gigged, and I mean the blood was covering me. It was
Oh.
all over my face to where the whole arena was chanting HIV at me. It was bad. And they aired it. It was on TV and they aired it. And I remember I was sleeping at my sister's house and my phone rang and it was my mom. And my dad was watching and my mom walked in and saw it and she, are you crazy? And just screamed at me, the blood, what are you can get sick. And AIDS was real rampant back. And I was like, Mom, it's Terry Funk. He's fine. Don't worry.
That's
right. Terry Funk.
If they only knew.
Yeah. If anybody's immune to every disease, it's Terry Funk.
I tried to tell her that, but
it's like getting vampire blood. It like purifies
you. She couldn't care less whose blood it was. She was appalled by it. And she just, they would record it for me because that was when VHS was out. So I would always tell I wasn't home and I'd be like, can you record this whatever time it came on? And they would record it. And of course they'd sit there. My mother would try not to watch it, but she'd watch me and she hated it. So
what did your dad think when you became a big star?
He loved it. He was just so proud of me, and everything I did, he either came or watched on television, and just I would talk to them after the shows were over. He was just proud. He was just a proud dad, and that made me so happy because I wanted it from both parents. I understood where my mother was coming from, but as long as I had my dad's approval, I was just like, okay.
Well, how long did it take before you were welcome in an Italian American bar where you could sit up at the bar instead of off in the side seats?
Oh, well, they let us in at 19 to drink.
Okay.
We were underage, And the best part was it got rated one night, and that's the night that I didn't drink, and I took a.
What did it get rated for?
Underage drinking.
Underage
drink. Yeah, I guess the cop saw all of us walking in and was like, "No, this isn't right." And
but they probably could have rated for a lot of things, couldn't they have?
I mean, if they went in the back room, I'm sure there was some illegal stuff going on. I didn't frequent the back room. The only thing I did was call the bookie. For my dad. I didn't go in the back room.
And the bookie was in the front room.
So as you started rising there, where you went into the bar there, were they real proud of you at the bar also?
Oh yeah, they all watched it. Yeah, they all liked it. But eventually I stopped going to those bars because I was never home.
Yeah.
You're on the road so much, and when my friends would go out, I wasn't around, and that's when you start to lose your childhood friends.
Right.
I can't go to your wedding. I can't go to your party. I can't go here. They didn't understand. And it was like, well, why can't you take off? And it's like, if you take off, your spot's going to be lost, and then they're going to give it to somebody else. You can't just take off. You can't call in sick.
They just don't understand that. And that's one of the tragedies of our business. When we got to miss so many things, that your friends and your family just don't understand it. Hey, that spot is there for the taking. It's there. If you're not there, somebody's going to step up and say, "I'll do it."
Yeah, like when they announced WrestleMania is in Vegas the other day, I was in the car coming home from a show or something with my family. And I said, "Oh my gosh, it's Easter weekend." And my daughter goes, "It's okay, Mom. We understand." Like,
wow.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Is it really Easter weekend?
It's Easter weekend, yeah. And I was just, I said, "But Mommy needs to make Disney money." And they were like, "We understand." And I was like, "Okay." But I feel so bad,
Well, that's interesting because I wonder how that'll work because, I remember Jerry back in the day, Christmas Day was our biggest day of the year.
That was huge, yeah.
Because families were together and families were free to be able to do things. I wonder if that translates to. I just thought about that. When that translates to Easter, where because families are together. Then they get together and watch WrestleMania. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't think we've ever had it on Easter before, have we, Jerry?
I don't think so. I mean, 40 years? I don't remember one ever being on Easter.
Yeah, I don't know if that was the only time the building that they wanted was open. I'm not sure, but my kids are so used to me not being around sometimes, but I was just like, "Oh, it's Easter." And they're like, "We understand." And I was like, my heart broke.
I would imagine though, if WrestleMania is in Vegas, there won't be a lot of people going to Christmas Mass or Easter Mass.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know. The sunrise ceremonies might be a little overcrowded because
That's right. You wake up, you're broke, you're feeling guilty.
Oh, geez.
I better go.
I need to go pray for this blackjack. Pray
There's
for this
probably a
blackjack
slot
game.
machine. There's a slot machine right next to you in church too.
Yeah.
They're everywhere.
So when during this time did Paulie, or was it Paulie that came to you that started saying we're gonna make you a regular?
Yeah, so like I said, I kept getting these phone calls like show up, and then like once they put me with the pit bulls, like we still weren't under contract. At least I wasn't at that point. It was kind of like on a handshake. And I was working with Gary and Anthony for quite a while. I started getting phone calls from WWF at this time, and I was only maybe 9 or 10 months on television at that point. So I was really green. And a gentleman by the name of Ed Cohen, I never met him in person.
Randall Booker, great guy.
Great guy. He was calling me a lot. And then when I wasn't home, he would call my mom and he would literally talk to my mom and say, you know, she'd make more money with us than Paul will ever make, Paul will ever make her. And so I would come home off the road and my mom would say, that Ed Cohen, such a nice man. He called and he said he's going to make you a lot of money. And I was like, oh. But he always ended the conversation with, don't tell Paul we had this conversation.
Wow.
And so in the beginning, I didn't say anything. I kept it to myself. I would have the conversation. And he didn't call me every day, but he called several times and I spoke to him. And finally, I couldn't take the guilt anymore. And I went to Paul. And I was just like, Paul, I've been getting calls from a man named Ed Cohen, and I'll never forget his face just dropped. And he said something to the effect of, well, what are you thinking? What are you going to do? And I wasn't really getting paid a lot. And I was like, well, what can you do for me? Because I'm like, the ball might be in my court here. How bad does he want me? And he said, I can't compete with them. I don't have their money. And I said, if you can just give me a little bit of a raise, I'll stay. Because I didn't want to leave. I just wanted something that I could start to live off of. And he said, done. And he did. And that's the night that I got a raise. And shortly after, he told me that night too, he was like, I see bigger things for you. You're not going to be with the pit bulls much longer. And that's all he said. And he didn't really elaborate on it. So I was just like, what's he talking about? And you have to kind of sometimes read between the lines with Paul, like he's cryptic. You know what I mean? But I didn't want to I didn't want to push him. I said, when he's ready, he'll tell me what's going on. And I guess the plan was for me to be with Shane Douglas, all along. But at that point, he just said, hang in there, keep doing what you're doing. People are noticing. You're going to become a huge star. And
now, was these phone calls from Ed? Was it what we saw on the internet where they were planning on putting you with Brother Love?
That's what he told me. Although I heard Bruce Pritchard said that wasn't true, but I mean that's what I was told. I mean, why would I make up a story? There's no reason for me to make anything up. I was told that they were. At every city that they would go in, they would have to hire, I don't know if it was like strippers or just these girls that they would find off the street, whatever. They were hiring a girl to walk with Bruce, I guess, to the ring. And they said they wanted somebody who would be a familiar face to the fans, somebody they could use on the road and hire. And he said, we're going to paint you red. He said, don't worry, you won't bump. He goes, you won't do practically anything. And I said to myself, well, I'm bumping my ass off in ECW. I'm trying to be one of the boys and make a name for myself. How is this going to help my career if I go there and I just stand there and do nothing? I didn't want to do that. I knew it was a bigger platform, but I felt that the position wouldn't have benefited me. And I think I was right. I really think that was the right decision. Maybe not for my wallet, but I think for my overall career, I think I made the right choice.
So do you think Ed was just talking this after talking with Vince or creative? Because you said Bruce said that that wasn't the case.
I heard Bruce say it like 2-3 years ago. Like somebody
Really?
mentioned it, and Bruce said he said something to the effect of I don't think I've ever met Bruce.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever met Bruce in person, but I feel like if there's heat, I don't know where it stems from, but I don't know if he was just like, she was never on my radar, but I was on somebody's radar because I was
on
told
Ed Cohen's
Sure.
radar.
I was on
And,
Ed's radar, and
and,
there was a woman too, and I can't remember the woman's name, but I think the woman initially was the one that saw me working. And
probably Sally, because Sally Pursuto was Ed's right hand man.
Maybe that was. I remember there was a woman
And
involved.
in defense of Ed was really in with Vince. I mean, Ed did a lot of deal making for Vince in the early, especially in the early days. Ed was one of those guys. He was an office guy, and Vince knew Ed's dad and was friends with him for years and years. And so when Ed came in, he was vice president of arena booking and did all the routing and did basically everything. He's the one, Ed's actually the one that brought me up to the office after I was doing the local promotions here in Florida. Because he through Vince brought me up there. So Ed had some strokes. So I don't think Ed was going off too far off the line when he was telling me this. So
yeah, I mean, it kind of caught me off guard when I heard the interview. Again, it was 2-3 years ago when Bruce said it. I don't know what show it was on, but number one, I would never make a story up. But like, why would I choose to be Sister Love? Like, no offense. There's a little bug in here. No offense to that, but it would be just a random thought that entered my brain. Like, let's make up a story about Sister Love. Like, no, it happened, and I was.
No, but that can make perfect sense. As Jerry knows, Vince kept a lot of things really close to the vest, and a lot of times he would just kind of let people. He knew a lot of times because you'd see him in meetings, and he knew what he was going to do 2 weeks from now, but he wouldn't tell people. He knew it. He was the ultimate kind of puppeteer, and not in a bad way. It's a good way. He had to be. We deal directly with this person, deal directly with that person. And those two people might not have information that crossed either way because they didn't need to because they dealt just with Vince.
Yeah, and I totally get that, but just the way I think the way Bruce, it kind of hurt my feelings. I was just like, geez, I never even met the man.
When you meet him, you need to punch him.
No.
They will punch him.
We'll punch him for you.
We'll punch him for you.
The same thing happened with Jim Cornette. Like, I met Jim one time in the back, like he came into ECW for something one night, and he was surrounded by like a million people. So like, I just snuck in and I shook his hand. I said, "Hi, how are you?" And that was it. And then somebody tweets me like 2-3 years ago, somebody tweets me, "Oh, Jim Cornette called you a hooker." And I was like, really? Right. So I went up to him because we were at a convention, and I said, "Jim," I said, "I'm Francine, and I met you years ago." I said, "But I don't know why you're calling me a hooker." And he goes, "I never said that." And then he went into a tirade, and he was the nicest man. And he goes, "Please don't believe what you hear and read on the internet." I was like, okay, I just want to make sure there's no, because I don't want heat with anyone. And I was like, why? If you don't like ECW, I get it, but I've never been a hooker. For don't call me names when you don't.
So we got it right here. You've never been a hooker.
No,
that's right. We got it officially right here.
We got it.
You heard it here. I've never been a call girl. A lady.
Jim Cornette, don't you say that anymore, or I'll hook you.
Nicer to me though, but to me that bothered me. And if something bothers me, I'm going to confront you and I'm going to say something. So I was like, "Why did you call me a hooker?" And he's like, "I never did." And then it was fine after that, and he was the nicest man. So I mean,
Cornette's I love Jimmy.
He was funny, and I'm sure Bruce is a great gentleman as well.
I would go that far.
Well, yeah. Me and Mr. Brisco are Bruce's only friends other than Conrad, and so we can make sure Bruce is a terrible person.
Oh, geez. Well, I love his brother. I love Dr. Tom, and
there's nobody better. John and I had a T-shirt. We'd take a bullet for Dr. Tom.
There you go.
When Pop won and Bruce or Brother
That's
Love.
right. That's right.
Oh, I'm sure he's lovely, but when I heard that, I was just like, oh, I'm not making it up. This really happened. And if my mother was still alive, she would tell you, like, yes, this gentleman used to call.
I bet your mother was upset on that statement.
Well, she just heard more money, and she was just like, aren't you supposed to make money in wrestling? And I was like, not yet, but I'm trying to. So,
So when did you give Ed the notice that you weren't going to? Because how did you cut that off?
The next phone call I received from him, I just said, look, I said, I told Paul and he gave me a raise and that's all I wanted. And he was very polite about it. Okay, well, I think he said something to the effect of, I still think you would do better with us, but I understand your decision and I respect it. And he was very nice about it.
Well, that decision, it took so much because you're really trying to compare apples and oranges there because, they want you to kind of be just the eye candy that was going on at WWE at the time where Paul, at least you had a chance to explore the business inside the ring as a competitor, as a talent too. So, deciding which direction you were going to go took a lot of intestinal fortitude from you making the right decision on that, and then obviously you made the right decision.
I just want it to work. Once you step through the ropes, you get that bug, and it was just I fell in love with the business very quickly, and I was just like a sponge. I would just listen to the guys, and because I didn't have a female mentor. And that's what I really wanted it. And I didn't get that from anybody that was there. It was like Sherry was there. I got to meet her one time. And she was lovely, and she was just telling me, like, when we work together, I'm gonna get that hair, I'm gonna rip you and throw you around and blah blah blah. And then right after, she tells me a story about how she was so drunk on the airplane going to Japan and she wrestled drunk, and I'm thinking, oh my God, am I gonna have to work with her and she's gonna be so drunk? Like, I don't know the business enough to know how these people function. I'm still green, so I'm just yes ma'am, yes sir, whatever. And she was gone after that. And that was the one person I looked up to and wanted to work with desperately. And she went with Harlem Heat. She went to WCW. So she was gone. Nancy Sullivan was there, and she was nice, very nice, but she never, I didn't want to approach her and bother her. I felt like I was a bother. Here's this little green girl running around, and so she never she was nice enough, but she never offered that role to me of being like a big sister or a mentor in the business. And I didn't have the guts to ask her to be that for me. So it was kind of like I would just listen to the guys. And I thought the more bumps that I took, the more finishers I took, I would get their respect. And that's why I just kept telling Paul, just let me take everybody's finisher. I don't care. I will. And I'll learn as I go. I never wanted to take it ahead of time because I was scared that I wouldn't like it and I wouldn't do it again. So I'm just like, let's just do it out there. And like, if I had to do a move to them, I would practice beforehand. But if they had to do, I trusted everybody 100%. I was just like, let's just go do it. Right. And
that's so interesting when you talk about having a mentor. Like me and Mr. Briscoe had all of us had tons of mentors, some great ones.
Yeah.
Every one of us, but the ladies didn't. I always said that during the Attitude Era, Tori Wilson and Stacy Huber were great athletes, and they probably would have been great wrestlers, but that was not their role. They didn't let them. They never trained them. They didn't train them at all. And they didn't.
And as far as other people being their mentor, who was there to be their mentor? Because there were no regular
That's right. There was
wrestlers.
Nothing. So you guys had a really rough road as far as having a mentor that could, because for us, there were always guys that would talk to us and pull us aside. Here's what you did well. Here's what you did bad. Try this, different things. For you guys, you didn't have anything like that. For ladies during the 90s, it was really tough.
I mean, the guys were there to help. We didn't have agents. WWE has the agents, AEW has the coaches. ECW really didn't have that. We had Paul, who was doing 50 million things at once, and he was always there to talk to you, or if you needed advice or help or something. Paul was always there and available, but he always had the headset on. He was always busy, so he was kind of busy doing this. Tommy Dreamer kind of took the secondhand role of his second or assistant or whatever. So Tommy was there to help. I depended a lot on the vets. I went to Shane, I went to Bam Bam, I went to Candido a lot because that was the triple threat. And those were the people that I trusted and that taught me so, especially Shane, so much about the business, because you drive up and down the road, you're in the car for hours and hours and hours. That's all you're pretty much going to talk about. And it consumed me so much that all I wanted to do was think of new spots to do and new angles to present to Paul, and we just talked about it constantly. And I became consumed with the business. Like there was nothing else going on in my life but wrestling at that point.
Speaking of nothing else going on, as you're growing up, you're a local girl there. Your friends, and you're starting to be on TV regularly. Were your friends supportive, or were you losing friends, or what was going on in that of your personal life?
So in the beginning, they came to a couple shows, and then it was kind of like, this one, like I said earlier, this one's getting married, this one is having a baby, this one's doing it. I can't make it. And there started to be the resentment and why can't you come, and not understanding. I'm trying to work hard to get that spot. And especially now, because after I leave the Pitbulls, they put me through the table. I go with Shane Douglas. I'm in the main event every single show. Yeah. I can't afford to lose my spot or have another girl come in and I'm not going to take off for your wedding. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but I'm missing my family functions as well as friend functions. And if my family can understand, you guys need to understand. They didn't at that.
It's really tough. I mean, imagine it's really tough on a woman too. But I know John and I mean, we've compared stories. You go back and you really don't feel that friendship that you had before you feel that separation, and you don't know why, but it's a hard life to be on the road and to have that commitment. And you made 100% commitment that the business was what your life wanted to be, and you made it your life there, and that says a lot about your character also.
And then one thing is Tuesday and Wednesday are our weekends, really, or somewhere during the week, are our weekends. We have to work on when everybody else is going out with their friends. We work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We work holidays because that's when the big shows are, and so we don't have, when they say, oh, let's go do something Saturday. You go, well, I can't. I can do it Wednesday.
They can't do
going out on Wednesday.
Yeah. And I mean, I think they, like, as time went on, they kind of got it after, because when they saw, I think in the beginning, they were just like, oh, how far does she think she's going to get? Do you think she's going to be a star or something? I don't think they realized like how committed I was and how determined I was to make a name for myself and to do, so much more than just a little indie show with which I never did the indies. I went right to ECW, but they saw all these local shows with, oh, there was only 100 people at this show, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, I work for ECW. We got like 2, 3, 4,000 people coming to see us. I don't think they understood the range of people that I was reaching out to at that point. And then once I was on TV and they noticed, then it was just like, oh, I get it now. But at that point, years go by and it's kind of too late. And so many milestones have passed and things have happened. And I mean, I still kind of keep in touch on social media with some of my high school friends, but I don't hang out with any of them. I hang out with my wrestling friends and my family, and that's it.
So that was about the peak years of ECW during that time, right?
Well, I mean, I started there in 93 and I was there when the ship sunk in 2001. So I was there for 7 years.
So at its peak, tell me about ECW. I mean, you guys had a very close-knit group that really believed in what you were doing. You had an incredible fan base that believed in you. It had to be a lot of fun and very satisfying to work there.
It was the best time in my career. the locker room, like you said, was a family. We still are a family. We're still working together. 30 years later, we're still all doing reunion shows. And I was just watching Backlash in France, and they were chanting ECW.
You know what's amazing about that is ECW did not have like a 40-year run. You know,
No,
and I'm not being mean, it had been an 8-year run, like you said. And people now, it's been a quarter of a century since ECW was really running, and they're still chanting ECW. That's quite a legacy.
It's so impressive, and I don't mean to bash any other companies out there, but we are like the only company that gets these chants on all the major shows and pay-per-views. When someone does something, ECW's chant it. You don't hear any other letters from any other
you never do. You're exactly
you never
right.
do. And that you know, it sounds corny, but I'm proud of that. Like I get goosebumps. I'm like, my gosh, it's 30 years later. Yeah, I'm proud to be an original. I'm proud of the work that we all did together, and I'm proud of the unit that we were, that family atmosphere. It is no joke. I mean, we fought, you know, when you're on the road with people, you're like brothers and sisters. People get their panties in a bunch sometimes, but it never got to the point where it was just like, I can't stand you, I want to kill you, blah blah blah. We're still, I tell them, we're still doing towns to this day. I talk to Shane, I talk to Sandman, I talk to Jerry. I mean, we all talk on the phone still. We're still that close-knit bunch. We try to get booked together. I feel safe with them. You know, my husband knows all these guys. He trusts all of them. They've been at my house. They sleep at my house. I can't ask for anything more. I'm so blessed to have had that experience and to be with those people. And I'll tell you a story that this proves how great that locker room was. And I'm not going to mention the guy because I don't want any heat, but this is a true story. One night at the arena, Bam Bam Bigelow had to do a spot with me. And he said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Just get in the ring and I'll do something to you. Right. So I go, okay, I trust you. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. And I run out and he takes me and he presses me over his head. And I'm thinking to myself, what is he doing? You know, I'm like 10 feet in the air. He dumps me to the side. And I'm trying to take a flat back bump, but I didn't turn my body in time because it was so quick. I didn't know what bump I was going to take. I ended up breaking my pelvis in two places that night. They rushed me to the hospital. I come back. I'm in my hospital again. I'm on crutches. I'm on Dilaudid, right? So I'm loopy. I go in my room. The whole locker room's in my room. They have beer, sandwiches, and they're all going to sit with me for the evening because they knew I got hurt, which, I mean, that was so touching. I was so happy to see everyone. So I'm just sitting in the bed, and we had a gentleman. He was from an older generation that worked with us for a short time. And he suggested that the guys take their turns with me because I was on drugs. I'm not gonna, that's the wording. You get the picture, right? He said it to 3 different guys and they can verify my story. They almost beat the crap out of him and they threw him out of the room, my hotel room, and he got fired.
He should have.
He did.
Should have got prosecuted by the law.
Well, we didn't see him out there. You hear a lot of stories from back in the day where, you know, women were roofied and women did this and women did that. And I was told the next day what happened. And I said to myself, you know, I could be with a bunch of guys who were a bunch of pigs and who would have taken advantage because I was, you know, on Dilaudid or whatever. That was not the case. They were protective of the women there, in and out of the ring. And I love them for that because God forbid if something happened that night, my whole life would have changed.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that story scared the crap out of me, you know? So from that day on, I was like, I know I can trust these people. And that's the only thing that I can even remotely remember that ever was kind of like, whoa, this is not cool in this locker room. But we made sure that guy got out.
You know, it's funny because you never expect horrible behavior like that, you know, talking about, you know, raping someone. But you do expect the behavior of a family to stick up for you. and so the guys that were there did what you would expect them to do, and that is
Yeah,
stick up for you, as
very, very grateful.
most people would.
Yeah, good people,
Good
and
people, that's right. And there are a lot of
right.
good people in the business. There's always
Yeah.
a few bad ones, but
There's more good people than bad people.
a lot more good people.
Yeah, absolutely. But you hear stories, and that my mind was just racing the next day when they told me that, and I was just like, oh my God. And it scared me. It was scary being a woman, in the business, and you walk in, you see 30 guys in your hotel room, and it's kind of like everybody was a gentleman except for that one guy, and they just kicked his ass to the curb. And I was just like, thank God. And that's when I knew these are my brothers, and I can trust them with my life. And, Bam Bam didn't mean to hurt me. It was just, it was an awkward bump that I took. And I mean, he came in the locker room practically crying. I'm so sorry. I was just like, it's okay. Don't worry about it, and stuff like that. But that was the only time I could ever remember that I was kind of like infuriated with not the locker room, but just that gentleman. I was just like, how he doesn't know our family dynamic, and now he does, and he's out of a job.
And that's so amazing, as John brought up the fans and the talent. You guys were a part of something that was just really unique at the time, and it has been time proved that what a quality product it was. But the camaraderie that you develop in there as you're building something, you like to have that sense of family as you're building something. Just as when back in the old days when WWE was starting to explode and John was around, I was around, we were all proud. We would have taken care of each other, but the extent that they took care of you that night really says something about that ECW locker room. It really does. That's good things.
Yeah, they were the best. And as far as like our working relationship, we were all in the same mind frame. We wanted that company to succeed. And I'm sure you've heard they called us the little engine that could.
Yeah.
We were there, our main goal was to get on pay-per-view. And then when we got on pay-per-view, our main goal was to stay on pay-per-view and get a national television deal because we were syndicated for so long. So it was never like trying to outshine the other person. It was like, let's work together and make each other look good so that the company looks good, so that we can all make money and we can survive, and move on to bigger and better things. And we were in it for the long haul, and in the beginning, I don't think anybody ever wanted to leave. And it was just like when WCW started picking, they were just throwing tons of money at guys. And, Paul was having some financial problems and couldn't pay what Bischoff and them were offering. And then, I know guys left, but it was like reluctantly leaving because everybody genuinely loved ECW and loved working there.
And in your vision, I mean, you're with Paul from your story right when Paul first took over. You saw Paul grow. Did Paul change during that period, or did Paul stay true to himself and true to the talent as you guys were getting bigger and bigger? Were pressures getting on Paul at any time?
I never noticed a change in Paul. Like I said, in my instance, if I picked up the phone and I called him, he'd always answer the phone. He was always there to talk to me. He was always there if I needed, advice or help or a friendly ear. He was never too busy for me. I don't know what he did with the other guys, but I know in my case he was available. And that's something that's rare. Because like other companies, to get to the top guy, it's kind of hard. You got to go through this guy to get to that guy and blah, blah, blah. Paul was always accessible for me. He always had his rah-rah speeches that we all got behind every single time, believed 100%. To this day, a lot of people said, well, that story was kind of bullshit, or this story was lying, or this. I never took it that way. I think because I wanted us to succeed so badly that it was like I wanted to believe everything that I was told. working without pay or behind on pay, but still showing up. We all did that because we wanted the company to stay afloat. And it's like, if we keep working, maybe the tide will turn eventually, and maybe something will come in our favor, and maybe the company will be saved. These are all the scenarios that were going through our minds for all that time. And when Paul stopped coming to shows, then it was kind of like, okay, what's happening? Because this was Paul's baby. Why isn't he here?
Mhm.
And that wasn't till the very end that happened. But man, I was like, it was like the Titanic. I was on that ship when it went under. And I'd still be on that ship if we were around today. I never wanted to leave. I told Paul, I never want to leave this company. I just loved it so much. And I don't know if it was me being comfortable being a big fish in a small pond kind of atmosphere, because I know when I, got my chance with WWE, whether it be I was too old at 34 or, they didn't see what Paul saw in me. It was apples and oranges for me at that point, and I did not get a chance to shine. Paul let me shine. Paul gave me that ball. I ran with it. They listened to my ideas. I couldn't ask for anything more in a company and in a boss, to be honest with you, because despite the money, he was great.
We had
makes any sense.
We had Spike Dudley on a few weeks ago, and we love, obviously everybody loves Spike.
I love Spike.
He's just terrific.
Yes.
But we were talking about ECW, and you wish that the internet as it is now was around then, because if it was, you guys probably could have made a fortune, because of the way they have social media, the way you guys are doing so much crazy stuff and entertaining stuff that you were limited by, terrestrial TV contracts, whereas if you had the internet back then and you could have monetized it in so many different ways like you can now, ECW might have made a just absolute fortune with what you guys were doing.
I believe so. I mean, one of the things that I heard back in the day, and I don't know how true it is, but at one point, Billy Corrigan wanted to buy the company. That's what I was told. At another point, there were other investors that were interested, and the feedback that the locker room always got was Paul wasn't interested in selling to this one or to that one, and we're all like, well, why not? And then I said to myself, well, does Paul not want to sell it because this is Paul's baby? This is Paul's creation. And if he sells it, it won't be Paul's anymore. You know what I mean? Like, was that the reason why somebody didn't pick us up? A lot of us still talk about it today, and there's no closure. We don't know 100%, and we were there.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know what transpired behind closed doors. I wasn't in those meetings, and I wasn't privy to anything. The last pay-per-view that we did, we were told we were going to do another pay-per-view. So we closed the show and we formed a new faction. And my promo was the last promo on that last pay-per-view, talking with the new faction that I had, these guys. It was Steve Corino, Jack Victory, and Just Incredible, and myself. And we were going to, be this new force to be reckoned with and all this stuff. And we were under the assumption that we had another pay-per-view coming up. And we didn't. Okay. And none of us were told that Paul signed a deal. Well, I wasn't told. I can't say none of us. With WWE or WWF, whatever they were at the time. I got a phone call at 9:30 in the morning, the Monday that Paul was debuting on Raw. And it was Dreamer. And he said, I just want to let you know Paul's going to be on Raw. And that was the final nail in the coffin for me. I was just like, okay, this is 100% done.
You guys had to be hearing the rumors during that time, and old WWE's coming in or WDCW coming in. How did you guys accept those rumors? And was Paul kind of deflecting them off of the talent, or what?
All I know that I think is a true story is that Vince was giving Paul money for the pay-per-views, because I know they were $250,000 each pay-per-view. And I was told that that Vince was giving Paul the funds to put the pay-per-views on. Now, was Paul paying Vince back, or how did that work? I don't know. Again, I kind of like didn't ask a lot of questions. I just kept my mouth shut and I just wanted to work. I said to myself, if I pry too much, something bad's going to happen. And you're
going to know too much.
I don't want to know anything. I just want my tickets to be there for the flights, and I want to get on a plane. I want to go to work, whether I get paid or not. We're going to save this company. And that's what a lot of our mind frame was. Again, if we keep showing up and working, and you bring your friend the next time, and we have double the gate that we did last time, maybe we'll get more money at the merch table. Maybe we had all these scenarios going through our mind. If we make more money, we're going to save that wasn't going to happen. So we, to the very last show, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, we were not told it was the last show. Paul wasn't there. Half the roster wasn't there. It was just
why wasn't there a full roster there?
They brought, I hate to use this term, but they brought in like main eventers, like bigger names for that show. And that was it. And I'll never forget, I was sitting in the locker room and the atmosphere was just dead. And I just was crying. I was sitting there crying, and Sandman called me over and he said, "You have a job." And I looked at him and I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Yeah, this is the last show. You have a job. I bought a bar. You're going to be my beer tub girl." And I was just like, great. That's great. That's what I aspired.
That's what I want to be.
Thankful that he bought the bar and he had it, which I worked 2 nights and that was it. It didn't last very long. But to this day, he's still one of my best friends. But that's not what I wanted to hear, and it was just like everybody's demeanor was just like heads down, walking around depressed, and Paul wasn't there. We were never told anything. So it was that was a bummer. Like, we held on for so long. I would have just loved truth.
Right.
Just an inkling. You didn't have to tell me 100% what was going on, but just, I was so naive at that point. I was just holding on for dear life for any hopes of a resurrection for that company.
Was Dreamer still around at that time? Point? Oh, well, was Dreamer stepping up? Because Tommy's a leader. Tommy's a natural born leader, and had a good one at that. So I would imagine that guys like Tommy and some of those guys back there that are leaders would be stepping up for you guys.
Yeah, Tommy was always Paul's right-hand man. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of us chipped in and did extra things and, in the company. But Tommy was always like his second. So if something happened with Paul, like Tommy was writing the lineup sheet and doing this and doing that, and he was running the shows most of the time at that point. But when you have your main guy,
right,
your main boss not show up and there's no explanation why, it's kind of like, what's going on? And we're still not being told anything. And it's like, are you that blind that you can't see? This is it. It's the end. But I didn't want to see it.
You didn't want to see it.
No.
Now, back in the old days, at shows like that, they paid you after the show. Were you guys getting paid after the show, or were you just a promise that check will be in the mail? Or
we weren't getting, the checks were late, or you weren't getting checks. At one point, we were like 10 checks behind.
Wow.
It was, and then I never took a draw in my life. And then they were like, well, at least take a draw so you get some cash. But we were getting the draws out of the merch money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then if the merch money's gone, then what do you use? Like, it's a mess. It was a mess. It was a mess.
Francine, it's impossible to read someone else's mind. So I'm going to ask you to read someone else's mind, of course. It's Paulie. It just seems like, a lot of people have bashed Paulie over the years, about the checks and things like that. But, he sunk everything into this himself.
Right.
And he had his whole life in this, and his whole life, when he realized it was the end. Do you think that his absence in some of those shows at the end was just because he didn't want to face the reality either? He knew it was bad, and he just, I can't bear to. Sometimes it's easier just not to go to something than it is to go and have to face the reality of what's happening.
It could be. Again, I don't do these podcasts to bash him, because without Paul, there'd be no me. And I've said that on every interview that I've ever done. He was gracious enough to give me a chance. And
No, and I want to make clear, I'm not bashing Paul at all.
no.
I'm right out. I'm a Paul Heyman
Paul
guy.
put everything he had in this. He didn't have the money to pay people. He wanted to. He was losing all his money himself.
No doubt. But for me, I would have loved for him to just sit us down as a group and say, this is what's happening. And we never got that. It was always like he would say, I'm going to a meeting and we're going to try to get this deal and blah, blah, blah. And so in our minds, we're like, yeah, we're going to get a new television deal or whatever. That's the mentality that we had. I don't know if those meetings ever existed. I don't know what meetings Paul went to. Like, there was never closure towards the end. Yeah. And I still don't know what happened. And, people are like, you work there, you're so stupid. Well, I'm sorry. I've never been told 100% what happened. I've heard bits and pieces. And to be quite honest with you, at this point in my life, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Take us to this, or finish your thought way there. I'm sorry.
No. I all I say is, like, I'll never bash Paul, and John might be right when he said maybe he couldn't face it either. Yeah. But for the talent who stuck by him in the company, I just wish there was a little more communication as to what was happening, because I don't know, I kind of felt blindsided, like, towards the end. I was just like, and then it's like, well, what do you do? I wasn't going to call WWF or WCW, hey, I'm available. Yeah. No, I'm not going to do that. So I had my first shot on the indies. And so that's when I started working indies. And I'll be honest with you, it was very lucrative. And I worked every weekend and I made a hell of a lot of money because they wanted us fresh off of TV. Right. So it kind of worked out, for me at that point. I'm just saying, like, I just would have liked closure. Right. Yeah. And that's why I love Paul. I'm so happy for his success and the Hall of Fame and all this stuff. Super proud of him. He's a creative genius. He treated me great when I was there. I just would have liked a heads up.
What did you think of Paul's Hall of Fame speech?
I didn't watch it.
You didn't?
I didn't.
It was wonderful, by the way. It was fantastic.
Believe me, we were at WrestleCon and everybody was coming to the table telling us about this speech. Something
it was great. It was really good.
It was wonderful, but something in me cannot watch it.
I can understand. I
don't know why. I just can't. I can't bring myself to watch his speech. Yeah.
Well, take us to Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Is that where the
last? Yeah, that was the last live show.
Was that pay-per-view or what?
No, that was a house show.
A house show.
The last show we ever did was a house show.
Now, take us to the locker room that night there. Paul's not there, of course. And rumors going around, is this the end, or did you guys have any type of ideal that, you guys are sharing the locker room for the last time at Pine Bluff, Arkansas? What was the thought? What was going through?
So pretty much, yeah, because we didn't have any info for the next weekend or the weekend after that. There was nothing booked. At that point, you're getting your travel and you're being told where you're going to go and all this stuff. Yeah. There was nothing. And so we're like, morale is like super low. It's down and everybody's walking around. And I just sat there and cried. I was just crying. And that's when Sandman was just like, you have a job. And I was like, well, that's good, but I want to wrestle. Like, what are we going to do? And I remember, like, they did a last, what is it called? Last call, where all the talent went to the ring and had a beer. I was weeping so hard I couldn't go to the ring. I sat in the back by myself and I just cried.
Wow.
And I cried in the car going to my hotel. It was terrible. It was a terrible night.
You guys knew at that point there, we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, we knew, but again, me being so naive, I'm like, well, maybe Paul's doing something that we don't know about. And maybe we'll get a phone call in a week saying, show up here. We're going to do that. And then that's when I got the call Monday, Paul's going to be on Raw. And I was just like, oh, okay.
That was Tommy that called you.
Tommy called me. Yeah.
And that's when you found out that ECW was officially over?
Well, if Paul signed the deal with Vince,
Yeah.
who's our leader anymore? Like who no one bought the company at that point, you know? And
were there any rumors that somebody was going to step in and take Paul's place?
there was a rumor that Billy Corrigan was interested in buying it.
And I'd heard that rumor back years ago also.
I had too.
Yeah, and you know, Billy had come to several of our shows, and we even used him on camera. We put him in the ring and had a couple, you know, he had a couple spots with us. And really nice guy, nice man.
Super guy.
Yeah. And again, it makes you wonder, like, why didn't Paul sell it to Billy at the time? Is it because it was Paul's creation? He created Extreme Championship Wrestling. He didn't want somebody else to have it. I don't know. I mean, that would have saved so many people's jobs if you think about it. I can't. I don't understand. I don't see why Paul didn't want to sell the company, unless that's the reason.
So after that, you started doing some independents. When did WWE come back into play with you, and where did TNA fit in this?
Yeah. We January 2001 was the last show. I did my first indies that whole year, very busy. And then TNA started in 2002, and I got a phone call from Bob Ryder, and they said, you know, there's this new company that's starting, and it's going to be in Nashville, and it's they're going to pay $10. It's pay-per-view. People have to watch it for $10 and all this. And I was like, okay. And he's like, we're going to give you a 4-night deal. And I said, okay. And he said, do press for us. I said, okay. So I was doing radio junkets for them and shows and all this stuff. And they have us do, we go in and they have us do this lingerie battle royal, which was a disaster. And just so bad, but so bad it was good. It was good entertainment, but it was so bad. And we taped 2 shows the first night, so that was 2 of my shots. Then I had 2 shots left. I wrestled the winner of the Miss TNA Battle Royal on the 3rd shot, and then I did something with the Blue Meanie on the 4th shot. And then Jerry Jarrett was like, "Well, I don't really know what to do with you." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." Like, I can think of 42,000 things to do with me. But again, I'm not really one to argue, especially when I don't know the person. I didn't know Jerry at all. Like, you know, I knew who he was, but I thought it would be disrespectful to fight with him on why I should have a contract. So I just said, okay, well, thanks for the opportunity. And that was that. And went back to the indies and did indies. And then 2005 was when One Night Stand came up with, WWE. And I got a call to do that show. And that was like a one-off. I thought it was a one-off anyway. And that's the first night I met you, John. And, you know, went in and did that spot. And it was great and got a nice payday from it. Didn't expect anything to happen. And then a year later, I get a phone call and they're like, guess what? They're bringing it back. I was like, what? And I was told something completely different than what happened when I got there. So that was disappointing. But it wasn't the same.
No, it wasn't even close.
Oh, no.
It had the ECW name and some of the ECW stars, and that was it. There was other than
that was as close as we came. Yeah,
it's kind of like the WCW Redux. You know, it just you had Booker and Dallas, but that was pretty much it. You know, I mean, a few other guys, but you didn't get NWO, you didn't get Hogan. You know, it's just
right.
The Reduxes that WWE has done have been really bad.
Yeah.
I feel like it could have been really well done, though. You know, again, this is what we heard, that Shane McMahon was going to run it, because Shane, from what I was told,
you're talking Shane Douglas, not Shane McMahon.
Shane McMahon. Shane McMahon.
Okay.
Shane McMahon was supposed to run the ECW.
Yeah, that was the talk during the time, Jerry, was that Shane was going to run. We heard the same thing, was that Shane was going to run ECW.
Yeah.
Because Shane McMahon was an ECW fan. I think out of the McMahons, he was the only one who knew our product. And, you know, when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's cool because Shane likes us and he gets it. And then, I get there and it was like I was told initially I was going to be with Test. And well, wait, let me go back further. I'm sorry. 2001, when I forgot this story. When we went bankrupt, I got a call from WWE again from Paul after he signed, and they were interested in me then, and they wanted me to work with X Factor, which was X-Pac and Just Incredible, and I think Matt Bloom, Albert.
Uh-huh.
I think Albert was in that. I think it was supposed to be like the four of us, but the way it was pitched to me was it was like going to be right on Raw live, and it was them against the Hardys. They were going to go right into a feud with the Hardys. So Lita and I would have, I think, eventually went off and did our own thing wrestling. But I didn't, at that point, I was 30 years old, and I didn't want to have to go to the performance center and have to train or whatever, whatever center they had back then. I don't even remember, Ohio Valley. I didn't know if they were going to send me down there to train again, because when you're trained in one territory, that's not the same as the other ones, and they do different stuff in WWF compared to what we did in ECW. In my mind, I was like, they're going to make me train all over again to be like this wrestler. And I didn't want to do that. So I kind of told Paul, I'm not really interested. I sent my pictures in, but I was just like, I don't want to do it. And so that was in 2001. And then 2006, I actually did sign because I was told I was going to be a manager. They had me doing bikini contests every weekend. And I was just like, I don't want to do this. It's super uncomfortable. You had so many kids in the audience, and
Right.
I hated it. I'm not going to lie.
It's hard to believe now, that you'd have a bikini contest or a lingerie battle royal.
Yeah.
Because the women have become at least
or a bra and panties match.
All right.
Well, and another thing was I didn't have to do that kind of stuff in ECW. Like I think Paul made me do one bikini contest, and that's because something fell through that night, and he was like, we have to do a bikini contest. Go to the mall and go buy a bathing suit. I was like, are you kidding me? We never did that before, ever. And it was like December or something. I'm like, there's no bathing suits here. And I ended up wearing a bra and panties underneath my robe because that's all I had. That's all I could buy at that point. But I did that the one time, but now I'm in my 20s. Now fast forward, I'm 34 years old, and I have to do all this bikini stuff. And I'm just like, this isn't what I signed up for. I thought I was going to be like a manager, and I even told Vince to his face, like, let me take Kevin Thorne's finisher. And he goes, we don't do that here. I said, you don't let the girls bump here? Like, and he goes, well, I didn't watch ECW. I don't know anything about you. And I mean, he came and pulled me out of line for my draw and walked me around, because all I did was go cry to Johnny Ace. I was like, give me my release. I want to go home. The whole time I was like, I'm not comfortable here. I don't like it. I want to go home. And Johnny's like, we're not getting rid of you. And I was like, and then they did. Eventually they did. Eventually I got the call.
Mr. Briscoe was in a very famous evening gown match, so he understands very well.
I didn't like it either, by the way.
I mean, you do it because
one of the toughest guys in the history of the business is in an evening gown.
Francine, I admire the heck out of you, but that night when I was getting dressed, I got a different admiration for women. I'm sitting there in a locker room. Undertaker sitting there. Of course, Pat's enjoying getting dressed. He's taking his time getting dressed. Taker's there, Olsen's there, and Triple H is sitting right next to me. And I'm fidgeting and I'm fumbling. I turned to Paul. I said, H, I'm going to ask you something I never thought I'd ask a man to do in my life. And he said, what's that? I said, would you help me fasten my bra? So
Jeff
he showed up
Gordon.
and he helped me faster my bro.
Yeah. You gotta
I
stuff your
never thought I'd have to ask a man to do that in my life.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I don't know. That's crazy. I know.
That is tremendous.
But you do it because, you take one for the team and it's like, okay, and you're a good sport about it.
Oh, we've all done stuff like that. You know,
Sure. And you
everybody.
have to.
There's no exceptions. If you've been in this very long, you've done some crazy stuff that you're thinking, I never dreamed I would do that.
Right. And I'm not saying I'm too good for that kind of thing. My disappointment came when I signed that contract and was told you're doing this, but this never happened. That's where the disappointment set in. And every week, go get your bikini. And it's like, I want to work. I don't want to just walk around the ring in the bikini. I'm willing to bump and work. And they didn't want that, and it just wasn't a good fit. And while I'm thankful and grateful for the opportunity, it was just like I couldn't get out of there fast enough.
Yeah, there was a lot of reticence to the women's wrestling. Finley did a lot to really help the ladies become wrestlers, and it wasn't because that was a directive from above. It wasn't. He just took that as in his own.
He just did it. He just did it.
And
he went out. He went out on a limb doing it. By the way, I mean,
that's right. He did.
It wasn't a directive, and that's what everybody wasn't expecting that. But when it started happening, and the results he was getting was just. It was like that ground wave that just keeps getting bigger and bigger than a snowball, man. It just kept getting bigger, and he kept doing a better job. And we started catering to the women who were athletes instead of just looking great too. And they look great too, but they could also, like Francine, they could also get it on in the ring real well. So
I feel like if a woman wants to bump and she wants to work, she should be giving that opportunity. And it was just like, you're told to like express your concerns and tell the office, like, if you have an idea, like Johnny always said, if you have any ideas, let me know. And I would say all these ideas and, now's not the right time, or we're not into that, or we don't do that. And it's just like, good Lord, like, what do you do here? Because where I came from, we did it all. And I'm not saying no to any. I'm willing to bump and do whatever, but I just wasn't. I wasn't given the opportunity to do so, and it was a disappointing 6 months for me there. So,
your passion was working in the ring, taking bumps and working. Your passion wasn't parading around in a two-piece swimsuit.
No, and if they would have came to me and said, "Listen, you're going to be doing a loop and doing bikini contests," I wouldn't have signed that contract. I would have said, "No, I'm not interested." But the way it was presented to me was that you're going to do exactly what you did for Paul. You're going to be a mouthpiece for somebody. You're going to be with a top guy. And I said, okay, that's great. I don't care who I'm with as long as we can work. And they were like, yep, and signed the deal. And then that never happened. And they did put me with Balls Mahoney, which was fine because I loved Balls. He was a great guy. But then, like, when the urine test came around and the drug testing and everybody had to, pee, Balls had stuff in his urine and he got thrown off the road. So they called me and they were like, get your bikini ready. And I was like, oh, man, I thought we got over that hump, And so I was right back to doing the same old thing. And I just, frustrating.
I told Jerry this when Spike was on the show, and Jerry never heard it. Have you ever heard Ball's story about killing a shark with a spork?
Work. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, Jerry,
I want to hear it from you because I still don't believe.
No, it's the same. It's the same. First of all, I don't even know where he got the spork from, but Balls had stories.
I've never had a spork. I mean, I've seen them, but I've never had one. I've certainly never had one with me when I was swimming in shark-infested waters.
No, he is.
When was the last time you swam in shark-infested waters?
Down in South Africa. Me and Barry Windham. I took a bump off the boat. I found out later that was where the great whites were. Not on purpose. But
I'll tell you another Balls story really quickly because I know we're almost done here. We were at a pay-per-view in Pittsburgh at the Golden Dome, and Balls, wrestled and did his thing and was completely bloodied from head to toe. And it was like he was done, and it was an hour later, and he's still sitting there just bloody. And we're like, why don't you go take a shower, get dressed? And he goes, no, Paul wants me to do a promo and he wants my blood, to be fresh and all this stuff. So I'm just going to wait. So we were like, okay. So he goes and does his promo, and then he goes to take a shower and he comes out and I see him looking around. He's got his towel on at first. Then he's just naked and he's sitting on the floor crying. And I'm like, what's the matter? And he goes, somebody's ripping me. I can't find my clothes. But he's in his own filth, like just drips. He's still gigged, so his blood's still all over. He just showered, but he's naked. And I was like, where did you put your stuff? And here, long story short, he forgot he moved his bag somewhere else. But he sat there just in filthy and disgusting and blood and just a mess and crying. And that's why
if he had a spork, somebody might have got it.
He might have gigged himself with the spork for the match. I don't know, but we love Balls and we miss him. And
wait a minute now.
You know what I mean. Balls Mahoney. We love Balls Mahoney.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
So after that, was that when you decided enough with the business and you're just going to go on with life?
So no, I actually, during my WWE little job that I had there, I met my husband and we started dating and decided we were, going to be exclusive to one another. He was living in California. I was living in Delaware at the time. I told him, well, if this is going to work out, you have to move to the East Coast. And so he did. He moved here and had babies, and I quit. I said, I'm done with the business because I don't want to travel anymore because I want to be a mom, because that's all I wanted to be. And my whole life was a mother. I never wanted to do anything else but be a mother. And once the kids were older, I started getting phone calls. I constantly got phone calls, but I always turned them down. Didn't want to do anything. But a lot of this stuff was local at this point, and the kids were older. And my husband's like, I can take care of them. Go out and make some money. And so I started doing some local stuff where I can come home the same day. But then people were like, well, do you want to do this con? Do you want to do, it's a 3-day. Do you want to do this? And I said to my husband, is that okay? Like, do you want me to get back on the road? And he was like, sure. And so when the phone rings, I go and I work. And it's been great. You can pick and choose when you want to work. I also do a podcast, Eyes Up Here with Francine. It's on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcast. I'm on YouTube under ECW Diva Francine. We have a YouTube channel. I work from home, and then I get to go out on the weekends when I feel like it. So I did have some downtime where I was just a mom and a housewife, and I just raised children. That's what I did. But then
how old are your kids now?
You.
How old are your kids now?
My daughter will be 15 and my son is 12. So they can basically like fend for themselves now. So if mommy's away, it's okay.
What do they think about Mom's Pass?
They don't like wrestling. They don't watch it.
Really?
No, I've never sat them down and showed them one of my matches. I did say to my daughter the other day, I was like, do you want to see something I did? And she goes, no, I don't want to see you get hurt. She says, it'll kill me to see you get hurt. So she goes, I have zero interest in the business. And I was like, good for you, because I don't want to near the ring. But they have their own aspirations. They don't want to have any parts of it. So, but they think it's cool. They think it's when they
now you go out, you're an attractive woman, and I'm sure people recognize you around your kids. Is that, do they kind of, that's my mom or what?
I don't get recognized that much, Jerry. I don't go out in full makeup. It's funny. We go to Disney.
You don't go out in a bra and panties.
I don't go out in my gown and my heels, but we were in Disney.
And your slash across.
No, Miss Montgomery.
Miss Montgomeryville.
Yeah.
Montgomeryville.
No, but I'll tell you something. Like 2-3 years ago, we were in Disney World, and we were in one of the rides, the holding spaces for the rides. It was really, really dark. And I had on like no makeup, ponytail, Donald Duck shirt, I was holding my kids' hands. My husband was somewhere in the room, but it was super dark. Like you couldn't see anything. We were waiting for the doors to open. And a gentleman approached me and whispered in my ear, "Are you Francine from ECW?" And I about had a heart attack because I didn't, I mean, like plain face, plain Jane, you know, I didn't. And I said, "Oh my gosh, yeah." And I said, "How did you know?" He goes, "I heard your voice." And he goes, I listened to your podcast. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And so we started talking. And that's the first time I was recognized in years. And I had a t-shirt on and no makeup. So go figure. I
But
don't
it was
know.
off your podcast and your voice.
Yeah, he said, "I heard your voice from across the room." I guess I have a very distinct accent. People say I don't hear it, but I guess other people do. And, you know, he recognized me from it. So it was pretty funny. But I just try to keep busy. You know, I love being at home with the kids and the family, but I love going to these conventions and
they're fun. They're fun
they're
seeing
so
the guys.
fun.
You know,
Yes.
I got to see you at the one about a year ago. I had so much fun visiting with you. You know, it's fun seeing people that you don't get to see very often, and for a finite amount of time. So you're there for a short time. You get to see them in the green room. It's enjoyable. It's like a reunion.
It is. I say we're so blessed to do this because you don't have to take any bumps. You sit
Right.
there, write your name on a picture. Like it's.
I told Ron one day we were in Baltimore where Ron won the title and became the first, you know, recognized Black World Heavyweight Champion. And I we're signing autographs. I said, "You're making more money today than you made when you became the first Black Heavyweight Champion, aren't you?" He goes,
Isn't that amazing?
"Yes, I am." Yeah. I said, "And no bumps."
No bumps. And and you're sitting there and you're talking with your friends the whole time and it's like a vacation sometimes, you know.
And then when the fans come in, sometimes they bring some of the most remarkable things, you know, that you've totally forgotten about.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden
forgotten.
you see that match or you see that situation, and it brings back just all of a sudden your mind just gets flooded with all those memories there. It's great.
You know, the weirdest gift I received was an eggplant.
Eggplant. Why do I tell us that story?
An eggplant. No, he just said, I've been wanting to meet you for so long. And he pulls out this bag. And, you know, some people bring flowers or candy or whatever.
They don't bring them to me and Jerry.
Well, they should. You guys deserve it.
You're right. They should.
I'll bring you some flowers the next time I see you, JBL.
Don't bring us an eggplant.
Now, he brought me an eggplant. And I said, "Well, what is this for?" And he said, "Well, I hear you like to cook." And I was like, "Okay, thank you." I said, of all the things you picked, you had to pick an egg because the eggplant emoji is the dirty emoji.
I love eggplant.
Why did you give me an eggplant for, you know? But that was the strangest thing I've ever received as a gift. So, but I'm thankful for them. The fans are great. These conventions are great, and I'm just lucky that I could still do it. So.
Do you recognize any of the old school ECW fans when they come in?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we had the ones that were always in the front row.
Yeah.
The same seats. This, you know, every time I know exactly who they are. And but then you get the guy. "Oh, I met you in 1996.
Right, yeah,
I was wearing that red T-shirt and blah." And I was, "Oh yeah, I remember you."
Yeah, I remember.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You're the one. You're the one.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but I say I do, but I really don't. But God bless them. They're great, and I love seeing them. I love reminiscing, and it's just fun. It's just a lot of fun. So.
And they're great because I got to finally run into you and booked you on this show.
I'm so happy that we met. Jerry,
that was where in Chillicothe, Ohio, I think
it was. But I don't think I met you prior to that.
I don't think so either. No. I think we did meet. I was running Gorilla at the pay-per-view there.
Oh yeah, that was a very brief.
But that was just in and out there.
Very brief encounter, yeah. But I'm so happy that I did this. You guys are great, and I wish you tons of success with this podcast.
Thank you.
I'm sure Jerry will get used to it in another 3 years.
There's no chance.
Give him time.
There's no chance. Zero. There's zero chance.
Great. Jerry, you're doing great.
Thank you. For an old man. In 3 years, I'll be 100 years old.
You look great. What did you tell me when I said you look great? What's your secret? Do you remember?
No.
You said I smoke a lot. I said, "Is that it? I'm going to have to start doing that too." Fantastic.
I'm a truthful guy.
Hey, that's fine. You look great. But
it's something.
It's great. Oh, it's great. But this was
Francine, hey, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure to see you. I've been so looking forward to this, visiting with you and hear your story. It's been wonderful afternoon spending it with you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I hope to see you both at a show sometime. So
Great. Thank you.
thank you.